Hi, I'm the Reverend Sheena Metal, and this is Saturday Night Spiritual. It's a very special day, not just because it's Veterans Day in the United States of America, and thank you for your service, all of our vets. My father was a vet. His father was a vet. My uncle was a World War II fighter pilot. My great uncle was a World War I ace, and my mother's father and her mother met during World War I driving ambulances for the Red Cross. So veterans are all over my family, and my uncle was in Korea. And although I have never served in the armed forces, I understand the value of service, and that's why we're here every month at Saturday Night Spiritual. So thank you to everybody who has served your country in any capacity. Thank you. Thank you for the service. It is so important that we all serve in our own way. We find a way to serve, and we serve. And that is such an important thing. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later, about how it is that you serve. And also about those that have come before us, right? Listening to the wisdom of the elders we're going to be talking about today as part of your service, and certainly the stories and the lineage that passed down from our elders. That's how we learn things, right? The pride we have in our elders that were veterans on Veterans Day. It's all part of listening to the wisdom and hopefully learning about service from those people. So I picked that title out today, listen to the wisdom of the elders, because 2 days ago was my mom's birthday. And if you've ever watched not only Saturday Night Spiritual here at Founders MCC, but anything that I do, you know that I spend a lot of time quoting my mom, talking about my mom. Her wisdom moves through me, and then I get to share that wisdom with you. So we'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes. But first, where are you? You're at the Founders Church of the MCC denomination, and this is Saturday Night Spiritual. I'm Reverend Sheena Metal. I'm the Interfaith Staff Pastor here. And every month, I bring you a universal, light-based, love-filled spiritual service that is for everyone. As my mama used to say, a y'all come service. And I consider MCC and Founders MCC to be a y'all come church. So I guess I was the right person to fit the y'all come bill for Interfaith Pastor. Thank you so much, of course, to the wisdom, which I'll be talking about, of our senior pastor, Keith Mazingo. He may not be my elder, just by a couple of years, Pastor Keith, but he is certainly an elder in ministry compared to me. I'm a baby minister. And our wonderful Spanish-speaking ministry head, Reverend Alejandro Escoto, who is also an elder I have listened to. Excuse me. I get all excited about service and my throat chakra starts to close. It's so important that you remember where you are, how lucky you are that we live in a place where we're allowed to worship freely, where you can check out this service at Founders one night, our Sunday service tomorrow morning or afternoon, depending on English speaking or Spanish speaking. And then you could go catch an online synagogue service this evening. You could go tomorrow morning and check out a Baptist service online. You can get your spirituality, as much or as little of everything, as much as you want. How awesome is that? That is one of the most wonderful things about not only interfaith spirituality, but about the free society that we live in, where you're allowed to worship as you want. And I know there are those out there, and we see on the news people trying to take those liberties away, whether through protests or violence or trying to change laws. Remember, As long as we all fight for the common cause, which is the root of interfaith spirituality, which is my beliefs are the same as your beliefs, only a little different. But I have the right to believe what I believe, and you have the right to believe what you really believe. And honestly, all paths paved in good lead us to the light. So remember that. Somebody who worships different from you, okay, they're still worshiping. You know, let's say there's a story, okay? My favorite novel is A Christmas Carol, so I'll probably go on and on about that during our December service next month. So let's say there are 4 people and 5 people, and all of us, our favorite story is A Christmas Carol. But one prefers the book, one prefers the play, one prefers the movie, one prefers a TV adaptation, and one prefers an animated adaptation. Well, guess what? We're all watching a different thing, but still it's everybody's favorite story. And that's how I like to think of our faith. Our faith is our favorite story. And how you obtain that information, that's completely up to you. So let's say you're all watching this. Someone's watching on their TV. Somebody is watching on a tablet. Somebody is watching on a laptop. Somebody's watching on a phone. Somebody's watching on their iWatch. That's 5 different ways, but you're all watching this. And that's what interfaith spirituality is all about. Interfaith spirituality says, here is the umbrella of the light. And we all live beautifully under the umbrella of the light, those of us that live in the light. Now, within this part of us living under the umbrella of the light, each of us lives in a different way. We're in a different place, right? The thumb believer is here. The pinky believer is here. But each and every one of us is still living under the umbrella of the light. And isn't that a beautiful thing? Isn't that a wonderful thing? We're all getting the information. It's all being shared. Let's say you got a piece of information about something going on the news. You might have gotten it from the TV. You might have read it. A neighbor might have told you. You're still getting the word. And the word is, all paths paved in good lead us towards the light. We are all, every one of us, living under the light. And we are choosing to worship, to live, to love, to thrive the way that we like to. Under the banner of the light. Does that make sense? It's so important. Okay. Think about that. When you think about interfaith spirituality, and think about it in this way. We're all living in the same world, and we're all having the same experiences, but we're all seeing those experiences through our own eyes. So I bet if I could reach through right now to where you are, let's say Dallas, because Dallas is watching, and I could take Dallas's eyes and put them in my eye sockets, and I could give Dallas my eyes. What I think of as the color of my water bottle probably would be a little different. Now, generally, we interpret colors the same way. That's how people know how to put colors where they put them. Because human beings interpret, this is a blue, that's a red, this is black, this is pink. But I bet if we were wearing each other's eyes, we would see similar things and we would see different things. Because everybody's perspective on everything is a tiny bit different. It's the same thing with spirituality. You could read the Bible and get something completely different out of it. You could read the Quran and get something completely different out of it. You could read the Book of Mormon and get something different out of it. The general ideas are the same, and that's how we worship together. But specifically, everybody has a different take. And that's what interfaith spirituality is. We're all on the same team. We're one human family. We're all people of faith. Even folks that are atheists have faith in the world. We're all having a similar human experience. I love that meme that says we are spiritual beings and we are having a human experience. And man, is that true. But each of us in our own individual way. And church is like, hey, you prefer the book of A Christmas Carol? Well, I'll come hang out with you on Sundays and we'll all read the book. Hey, you prefer the movie? Well, I'll come over Friday night with a bunch of us and we'll all watch the movie. That's the beauty of gathering together. We gather with people who enjoy the things that we enjoy, who worship in the way that we worship. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we go somewhere with somebody who worships in a completely different way. And that's fun to see something different. When I was a kid, my mom would pack me up with friends and she would send me off. By the time I was 9 years old, I had been to Presbyterian church is what we were. I had been to non-denominational Christian. I'd been to evangelical. I'd been to Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Catholic Mass, synagogue, a Buddhist temple. Oh, I know I'm missing something. As soon as we moved to California when I was 13, Mormon temple. I didn't know any Mormons when I lived on the East Coast. I mean, any place that I went to like a Buddhist, a Buddhist kind of hybrid Christian church with a Korean friend of mine once. Anything she could think of that was different. And it was always exalting everyone else's faith. I had a friend who was Jewish when I was in elementary school, and she got pneumonia, and she was out with pneumonia. And so my mom we made menorahs. She's like, let's make her a big menorah, because it was right at Hanukkah time. She's like, it'll be fun. So mom started pulling out the crafts and the paint and the glue, and we made her this, giant menorah that was basically made out of popsicle sticks and styrofoam balls. It was gorgeous by the time it was painted, because my mom was a genius in that way. But it was always about learning about other people's faiths and enjoying those faiths. And today I was at the pharmacy, and I saw they had a big Mexican Santa. So it was like Santa, but in a serape. And he was holding like worry dolls, and he had like a handmade Mexican blanket. And I'm like, how amazing is that? I love Mexican Santa. I almost bought him. I have all kinds of Santas from everywhere. I probably now will go back and get Mexican Santa, because I think everybody in California, whether or not you're a practicing Christian, needs to have Mexican Santa. It's so beautiful to me that we're all so alike, yet we're a little bit different. And that's what interfaith spirituality really celebrates. The differences in our similarity. And that's what I love about being an interfaith pastor. If you want to find out more about this service, foundersmcc.org is the church website. We also have a wonderful YouTube page and a fantastic Facebook page for Founders MCC. You can find me at Rev Sheena, foundersmcc.com. That is an archive page with links to our past services on it. And also SaturdayNightSpiritual.com is our community page. Sheena Metal Spiritual is my page. On the contact, you will find my email and my phone number. Feel free to reach out. I answer quicker by text because I have my phone with me all the time, like everybody in the 21st century. I never don't return an email or a text message because part of my ministry is staying connected with folks. Get to know us. We're on the second Saturday of every month at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Come and see us. And if you'd like to donate, what I like to call help us to help you to help others, you can text is the easiest way, 77977. And make sure you say you like Saturday Night Spiritual just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. Now you know a little bit about what interfaith spirituality means and why it's so important to me to do this interfaith service. Now, let's talk a little bit about elders. So, I know we talk a lot about, I see on Facebook, right, this time of year, Veterans Day is coming. I see lots of pictures people put up of their parents that served, their grandparents, aunts and uncles, siblings. We're very proud of the veterans in our family. And I think that's beautiful. And I think Veterans Day is a beautiful celebration. We should be proud of our elders. Now let me just do a little disclaimer here, because I'm sure there's some of you that are getting all fired up right now about what I'm saying. When I say we should listen to the wisdom of the elders, or of our elders, I do not mean we should turn the clock back to 1935 when different people in our country were treated differently than they are now. I am not saying, I love that nostalgic time. Remember in the 1800s when women couldn't vote and children were property? I'm not saying that. Of course, progress is wonderful and we're supposed to evolve and become more enlightened, not just as individual human beings, but as a species as we spend more time on the earth. That being said, in ancient cultures, especially before the Industrial Revolution, at the turn of the 20th century. For those of you who are confused, we're now in the 21st century. So as we clicked over from the 1800s to the 1900s, and the Industrial Revolution changed what the face of a career and a job for many people in the United States look like. And I will just speak about the United States because that's the country that I live in. And that's the only country I can really speak on. But I don't imagine in many places of the Western world it was any different. Pre that time, it was very common for generations of families to live in the same home. And if they didn't live in the same home, to live in the same area. And it was very common for, as the parents went to work oftentimes, the children were taken care of by the grandparents or the great-grandparents. Growing up, my best friend, who's been my best friend since I was 14, she lived with her mother, her grandmother, and her great-grandmother, 4 women living in a house together, and it was awesome. And so much of the wisdom that she gathered was not just from her mother, but was also from her grandmother and also from her great-grandmother. And she has passed a lot of that down, so her daughter, who never knew anyone but my friend's mother, she never knew her great-grandmother or her great-great-grandmother, still carries that wisdom. And still spiritually is in tune to them both, even though they left the earth before she died, before she was born. We used to, in different when we were tribal, we were nomadic, it would all be about what the elders said. You had a problem, you would go to the elders. Now again, those of you that are starting to get a little unhinged, let me just say, not every elder has the right message. So, don't have to listen to your parents just because they're your parents. Some people you shouldn't listen to. Some parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older siblings maybe should not be listened to because it's a case-by-case basis. Just because somebody's your parents does not mean they know what's best for you. I'm talking generally about the ideas of elders in society. That was how we learned a lot of our manners. It was how we learned a lot of customs, our family history. And it was also often how we learned about spirituality, because the traditions of the tribe would be passed down by the elders. And those were earthbound traditions, and they were also spiritual traditions. And then as we became more settled and we began to live in huts and then in homes, the same thing. And a lot of it was because your grandparents had the knowledge of their grandparents. But also a lot of it was because as folks got older and couldn't work as much, they had more time to sit and tell stories. And we would listen. And I know in a lot of places that's going away. And since my mom passed 7.5 years ago, but who's counting, right? 7.5 years ago, yes, 7 years and 8 months ago today, March 11th, 2016. There's so many things I want to ask her. There's so many things I never asked her. Some things I've looked up on, Ancestry.com, and I'm like, what? Or my cousin just got a bunch of all her photos digitized. So she's sending me the ones she finds that have me or my mom in them. Like, what is this? Why did I not ask her what this was? Because those weren't the photos my mom had, right? So those weren't the photos I grew up looking at and asking about. There's a great photo, I think I posted on my Instagram, which is just Sheena Metal. As my mom sitting under a Christmas tree smoking a cigarette. Now, I knew my mom smoked cigarettes until she tried to get pregnant with me, so until she was 30. But I never had actually, I don't think, seen a photo of her. And she's in one of those like sleeveless sweater tops, and she's just sitting next to a Christmas tree and kind of ignited any second. She's got this, and I'm like, because I think of my mom as being this, very pure, spiritual, psychic medium, hypnotherapist, take care of children, teacher, non-smoker, barely drinking. I know she had her wild days, but it's the funniest photo. And she looks so happy to be sitting under that tree smoking a cigarette. I wish I could take that photo to her and say, what was this day like? That's the importance of the elders. And I find, as I've gotten back in touch with my cousins from both my mother's adopted family, she was adopted when she was 12, and what I can piece together from her birth family. I have a cousin there I'm in touch with, and another, first cousin once removed, is that right? My mom's sister's granddaughter that I'm in touch with thanks to 23andMe. I know more about the family than they do, and they stayed in that general area. They weren't adopted. But my mom was really into passing on wisdom about things. And I sucked it up. And you all know that because when I do these services, right, every month, I'm always talking about things I learned from my mother. My mom loved Christmas. And she loved the story of Jesus' birth. So we watched a lot of movies, animated and otherwise, about the greatest story ever told. And she would explain everything to me. This is where the wise men were from. Here's where they came from. This is why they're dressed 3 different ways. They were from 3 different places. This is what the North Star is. So I became this inquisitive little munchkin that just always asked questions. And now here I am in my 50s. And I still can't stop asking questions. I want to know about everybody. Like I go to a party and I'm like, what's your story? I want to know about everybody, what they're doing, what everything is about. I'm constantly clicking on the things that come through from the Google alerts that you get. I'm like, what's that? What's that? You can train yourself to be someone who gathers that wisdom. And listening to the wisdom of the elders doesn't mean, you have to adopt anybody's sociological, cultural, political, spiritual opinions or beliefs that you don't gel with. You don't have to change yourself into somebody else. But you do have to listen and see what resonates with you, what doesn't resonate with you. What can you learn about? Especially with spirituality. Being a person of faith is being a seeker. It's asking the questions. What does that mean? Why did that happen? What did Jesus mean when he said that? What did Buddha mean when he said that? And it's finding the spirituality in everything. Historical figures, famous writings, nonfiction and literature. Watching movies and finding quotes that you like. I believe last month I started out the service with a quote that I had heard in a TV show that I thought was such a spiritual lesson for us all. And I'm so very thankful that my mother trained me to be a person that was always seeking and always absorbing. I mean, on Veterans Day, right? If you ever sat down with your older relatives that are veterans and asked them, what was it like to be in the service? What was it like to be alive during a war? During a world war? What was it like to be drafted? To go to a foreign country and how did you get through if you didn't know the language? And find things out, because in every bit of knowledge that we acquire from humans, from books, from archives, we learn more about the way humanity works. And when you see that your story is my story, they're just mirrored. When you can find the commonality in everyone's story and compare it to your story, that is when our human family, our species, gets a little bit tighter. We get a little more interwoven at that point. We get a little more connected to each other. That is when. And that's beautiful. But you get that by listening, right? How do you take in knowledge? You listen, you read, you watch. You learn about what's going on. And sure, are there people out there that went to church and learned stuff when they were 5 years old in Sunday school or CCD or whatever they called it, where you went to church, and that's their beliefs, and those haven't changed, and that's it? Sure. Is that okay? Sure. All roads paved and good lead us to the light. But don't you want to expand from there? Don't you want to know what else is out there? Don't you want to find what you love? Don't you want to say, oh, well, these are my 3 favorite parts of the Bible. Okay, well, maybe go back and give another crack and find some more stuff you love. Because every time you read over something, every time you investigate something, every time you take an interest in something, you walk away with stuff that you didn't know about. And that's awesome. Don't you want to really know why you believe the things that you were told in church when you were 5? Don't you want to really know what you love about that? Why you love that so much? You get that from the wisdom of the elders. And sometimes the wisdom of the elders is the History Channel. Because 100 years from now, people will be going back watching those History Channel episodes saying, did you know people didn't know much about the true story of Jesus before the History Channel? Like, some people knew, experts knew, but the whole world didn't know. I'll tell you one of my favorites, a little pre-holiday treat for you. This is one of my absolute favorites. So my mother loved the wise men. Long before my mother admitted to being a psychic medium, and long before we knew that the wise men were psychic mediums, thank you, History Channel, or oracles, same thing. My mom loved the wise men. They were her favorite thing. As a matter of fact, in my curio cabinet, which is right here in my office, which was her office, this is her desk that I sit at, knock on wood, there is a curio cabinet that I call my Ascended Master cabinet. So it's all spiritual things that I love for spiritual reasons. Now, it's not all holy people, or it depends on what you think of that. Abraham Lincoln is there because he is an Ascended Master of mine. Yoda is there because he's an Ascended Master of mine. But it's all different saints and deities, and there are 3 porcelain wise men in there because I resonate with them. So anyway, before we knew any of that, I'm a child. And what do we all know? The wise men brought Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So here come these guys, right, to this very humble manger. And they're dressed to the nines in silks and gold and velvet and satins, big hats, fancy camels. And, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph don't even really have a pot to poop in. But these guys, right? So they bring gold, and they bring frankincense, and they bring myrrh. And when you bring myrrh, and when you see the photos of it, or you see the statuary, there's always big fancy chalices, or, things that look like serving dishes, and the riches are coming out over. So we always assume it's a wealth thing, right? Oh, they came and they brought this poor baby money. Well, if you know anything about the story of Jesus, you know that as his birth was foretold, many people wanted to end him because of the good he was going to bring, even before he got started on the earth as a baby. Well, frankincense and myrrh and gold, we now know in the modern metaphysical world, are 3 of the biggest things you can use for spiritual protection. So they weren't bringing the baby riches, they were bringing the baby protection because he was so important. Now, I never knew that, and my mom didn't know that until we both watched it on the History Channel. But I now pass that on to people. Someday when I'm talking to kids who are 10, 11, 12 years old, and I'm the elder, wait, that's already happening, I will tell that story. And those kids will pass that on to their grandkids. Hey, guess what? These really amazing oracles from all over the Middle East and Africa came on camel following a beautiful star that scientists know at different times of the year, that thing shines more, to find this little guy that was going to change the world and bring him what they knew was protection. These are the things you learn when you investigate, and they're beautiful. These are the things you get when you listen. I wouldn't have known anything about what ambulance drivers did during World War I, or that Americans volunteered to go over and work for the Red Cross over there if my mother hadn't told me the story that was how my grandparents met. There's so much to be gained from allowing wisdom to move through you, from wherever it comes from. And when you're the one that has that wisdom, wow, then you should be sharing that wisdom with the world. because we are all here to share so we all can be closer. So we don't feel different. So you don't feel like, well, what are you like, and why are you like that, and I'm like this, and even though we live on the same street, we don't have anything in common. Where is the commonality? I live in a place where a lot of people where I live are spiritually and politically very different from me. You know something we can talk about? Veterans Day. We can talk about family members who served, and we can learn. We can talk about the 4th of July. We can talk about Thanksgiving. Sometimes on a good day, we can talk about Christmas. But they don't like to hear about pagan Santa and pagan Yule log and pagan Christmas tree. That's a bit much. You can find commonality with folks. And you can find wisdom from elders, even if you don't want to believe everything they say. Even if you don't like everything they have to say. There is history in what they're saying. And that's beautiful. Super beautiful. And it's so important. Super important that we obtain that wisdom and we pass that wisdom on. You know, on Thanksgiving, spend some time with your family, younger members of your family, or friends' family, wherever you are, Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, talking to younger people about some cool stuff that you know. I spend a lot of my time, because I've been for quite some time an advocate and activist for our beautiful queer community. I give you all the letters, but you already know them. And I'm not sure where the alphabet's at right now. It shifts all the time. So the last time it was at LGBTQIP2SAA. Is it still there or has it changed? That's the last one I memorized. If there's a new one, let me know and I'll memorize that one too. Explain to, I almost said kids, and I said it just like my mother. People in their 20s and teens and sometimes 30s about what Stonewall was, why we have prides, what marches were about, how people had to hide, and they turn on the light bulb and everyone knew to separate before the cops got there. I mean, all that stuff that they don't know because they live in a world where they turn on the TV and every TV show has 3 queer people on it at least. They need to know why queer people are now allowed on TV. They need to know why kids can come out at 5 years old and tell their friends that, oh, guess what, Mom? These are my friends and they have 2 moms or 2 dads or 2 non-binary parents, or that's all because of the folks that came before that fought. We need to know, my best friend and her son are living historians, and they do a huge Civil War reenactment in my hometown here of Huntington Beach, California. And we need to know that we almost lost this country. We almost tore each other apart. And then we came back together, and be thankful that we're not torn apart right now with brother fighting brother and cousin fighting cousin. We need to know how we almost lost the world during World War II. But we didn't because we banded together under the umbrella of the light. And a lot of people lost their lives trying to hold the world together. We need to get that wisdom. We need to know those things. Let's say you say, oh, my family was Catholic and then we became Protestants. Well, why? What happened? What's the story? We need to know these things. So my mother's sister, birth sister, told her that our family came to Georgia to help James Oglethorpe build Savannah and the Georgia colony as indentured servants. And then after we gained our freedom, we migrated to Louisville, which is where my mother was born. So I've learned a lot about Irish immigrants to Louisville and how they helped other immigrants that came, like the Germans. So I was told we were Northern Irish and we were Protestants. Well, I did my 23andMe. And guess what? My ancestors come from Southern Ireland. They're Catholics. So at some point, they migrated to the north, converted. Maybe they didn't have a choice in that conversion. Came here as Protestants. I learned from Ancestry.com that as they came to the United States, they changed their name from the Irish spelling to the English spelling. And then when they migrated to an Irish colony in Kentucky, they changed it back to the Irish spelling. Isn't that fascinating? Don't you wish you could sit down with the generations 5 and 6 back and ask why? Well, you know why, right? When they were working for the English, they had to have English names or they would be chastised. Then they were with Irish people and they were free. They stayed Protestant. Maybe some didn't. My family did. Listen to the wisdom of the elders. Get the stories and then become the storyteller. Look at MCC. This is a church that was founded by people, and so many people in our denomination grew up in evangelical churches. I did not. And now they're this progressive, Christian, accepting, beautiful bunch of people. How did that happen? Was that hard? Just because your church told you couldn't be in it because you were queer, inside, were you still an evangelical person? Were there things that were difficult for you to come around to? Like, having a wacky interfaith pastor who talks about crystals? When Founders MCC was created, did they think that one day they would have a pastor that would have this selenite wand with a Hindu elephant on it, and I would hold it up during a service with a special healing point? That used to be more of a point, but the cat knocked it over. It's the cat's. How did that happen? What is the history of our church? Don't you want to know? Always listen to the wisdom of the elders. I've done a lot of things in my life that probably were dumb. I'm a human, and humans do dumb things. But one of the things that I did that was right was I listened to my mom. And my mom was a good person to listen to. And I've learned so much from her. And I pass that on every day. That wisdom. Because, man, she was full of it. I started a nonprofit, raisingthevibration.org, after she died. And it's a peace, love, kindness, unity movement. Words she believed that the world needed more of. And it's all based on her teaching. So I could spend the rest of my life sharing her with the world. What do you want to share? What do you want to get on your soapbox and talk about? What's your ministry? What do you want to talk about? What matters to you about humanity and your life and your history? What have you gathered from the elders that you now want to share? That's what I want you to think about. If you'd like to donate to the church, I would love that. Text 77977 and make sure you say you love Saturday Night Spiritual. I'm Reverend Sheena Metal. I'm at Sheena Metal Spiritual. Our community page, SaturdayNightSpiritual.com. Church page is FoundersMCC.org. And Rev Sheena, FoundersMCC.com is an archive page where you can watch all of these services. It basically just has the date, the sermon title, and a link, and you click it and you can go. Enjoy. Please find us everywhere on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. We are Founders MCC. I'm so proud to be a part of this church. Thank you to our wonderful board of directors and our senior pastor, Keith Mazingo, for continuing to have me. And to all the pastors that I love so much here, every one of them. Reverend Alejandro Scotto, my darling Reverend Lucia Chappelle, the dearly departed Reverend Steve Peters, always alive in my heart, and all of our other wonderful pastors and people who help, and music ministers, and I'm so blessed to be in this wonderful place. And since it's 2 days from my mama's birthday, I'm going to leave you really quick with the Irish prayer for mothers, because she was my Irish mother. May embers from the hearth warm your hands. May sunshine from an Irish sky warm your face. May a child's bright smile warm your heart. And may everlasting love warm your soul. Happy birthday, Mama. I miss you. Thank you to veterans and everybody who served. We're here the second Saturday of every month. I'm the Reverend Sheena Metal. This is Saturday Night Spiritual. God bless and enjoy your life. Let the light from God fill you and pass that love on to others. It's contagious. I love you all.